I'm Kafir Gavrieli, and I have the pleasure of moderating this panel of esteemed leaders who are fighting anti-Semitism on campus. Let me introduce you. Ken Marcus is the founder and chairman of the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law. I'm sure many of you have seen them in the press recently. The center has recently filed numerous legal complaints for anti-Semitism against some of the most notoriously anti-Semitic universities in America, such as UC Berkeley, UPenn, and Wellesley. Ms. Yael Lerman. Yael is the founding director of the StandWithUs SIDOF legal department. We have Nati and Debbie Sidoff here, as well as Roz, longtime patrons of the Impact Forum. The department empowers students and community members by providing a legal response to anti-Semitism and anti-Zionist activity. And we had a late switch from Jacob Bain, who was mentioned earlier, to Brandon Biegler, who's the Chief Political Officer of Israel on Campus Coalition. ICC unites the many pro-Israel organizations that operate on U.S. campuses by coordinating strategies, providing educational resources, sharing in-depth research, and increasing collaboration. It won't surprise many of you, based on Adam's introduction earlier, and what you know about these leaders and their organizations, they work together often and collaborate in our common fight against anti-Semitism on campus. Thank you all so much for joining. I'd like to start by underscoring the primacy of this topic and why we decided to dedicate this quarter's Impact Forum to the topic of anti-Semitism on universities. First, because we all know it's been terrible, as bad as I can remember in my entire lifetime. But also because of something that came up in our Impact Forum a couple months before October 7th. We had a keynote speaker here, Barry Weiss, who I had the privilege of interviewing. And she told us a story about when she was at Columbia and how bad anti-Semitism was there, how hostile an environment it was for Jews. But everybody told her that this was a phase that students go through, and eventually they would get real jobs, enter the real world, and that this toxic ideology would dissolve and they would grow up, essentially. What we know now definitively is that that's not true. What happens at universities is pivotal to what happens at all other major institutions in America. And that's why you're all here. Thank you on behalf of all of us for the fight you're fighting on campus. Brandon, as a primer, I'd like to start with you and ask you to just paint a picture for everybody of what is going on as far as anti-Semitism on campus today, and how is it different from before October 7th?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us. So first, to echo your point, I've been at ICC for almost 9 years now, and it's never even come close to this. Jewish students are scared. They don't want to, we're here from students who they don't want to go to class. Some of them are even afraid to wear their Jewish stars or kippahs. So it's very, the climate's very bad. And the anti-Israel activists on campus, they used to, maybe 2-3 years ago, even would use the word Zionist as a code word for Jews. And now the anti-Semitism is very brazen. They are now using the word Jew in a derogatory way. They don't even try to cloak it or hide it by using the word Zionism. And so since October 7th, we've seen over 500 pro-Hamas rallies on campuses. I'm sure you all have seen some of those in the city of LA and other places in California. We've recorded, our research team has recorded over 100 incidents of anti-Semitic harassment, bullying, and assault on campus. And as I'm sure most of you saw in the news, a couple examples that come to mind are at Cornell, I believe it was in October, where a student that went to Cornell threatened online to shoot up the kosher dining hall at Cornell. And also at Cooper Union in New York, Jewish students literally had to barricade themselves in a library because of the anti-Israel mob. So it's a very scary time. And what's happening is that this organization, American Muslims for Palestine, which is kind of the umbrella group for all of the anti-Israel organizations, they're based in Chicago, and they're providing resources directly to Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace, et cetera. So when these students need digital support, they need social media support, they need poll-tested messaging, they need political strategists. It's very much a grass-tops effort, not a grassroots effort. And that is certainly contributing. They are telling Students for Justice in Palestine what to do, to like put on these rallies, to introduce ceasefire resolutions, boycott, divestment, sanctions resolutions, et cetera. And at ICC, we are trying to level the playing field by providing those same resources to students, which we'll talk more about in a bit. But yeah, the bottom line is the situation's really bad. Jewish students are scared, but fortunately there's these great organizations, the Brandeis Center, StandWithUs, ICC, and others that are providing support to these students.
So as a result of the climate that you just described, there were a few hearings of college presidents who gave congressional testimony. I don't know if anyone here heard about that. Apparently the most viewed congressional testimony ever, at least according to Elise Stefanik. Yael, you're closer to what's happening on campuses. We read about it every day. Are universities taking anti-Semitism more seriously?
So first off, thank you for having Stand With Us here today, and it's wonderful to be with ICC and with Brandeis Center that we love to partner with. So yes, I would say first of all that universities are finally starting to pay attention, not because they suddenly care about anti-Semitism, but because they've been forced to. It's a combination of the congressional hearings, litigation, serious media coverage, and donor flight. But again, let's not be fooled. This is no sudden love for wanting to fight anti-Semitism. It's because we've scared them, and we must keep building on that momentum. So how is Stand With Us, how is the legal team building on this momentum? There's a few ways. First, I've been told there's no reporters here, but I know that Suisse is in the room, so this is off the record. The congressional hearings, let's start there. So first off, as many of you may know, that same committee has now made document requests of Harvard. They're being stonewalled. Harvard is not being responsive, so subpoenas are going to start coming down the line. They also want to take things to another level. So they know the people working in the Congressional Hearing Committee. They know about Stand With Us' reputation on campus. They know about our legal team's work, so they came to us. And yesterday, we provided them with the names of students and which schools to go after next. And so you're going to start seeing the news, students coming to provide testimonies to the committee. And another thing you're going to start seeing in the news is that they're going to start going after K through 12 anti-Semitism. And again, because Stand With Us has a strong presence in high schools, and we've now had some significant wins in the high school legal space. I don't know if I'll have time to get into them today, so please find me afterwards if you want to know more about that. Again, they've come to us, and we will be working with the committee to make sure that we address K through 12 anti-Semitism as well. So that's the congressional hearings. But of course, we have to build the momentum. What other things are we doing? I'm sure Ken will also address this. It's critical that we bring the lawsuits and the Title VI filings. I can't go into details now, but I want you to know that the Stand With Us legal team has been working relentlessly since October 7. And literally next week, you're going to hear that we have filed a Title VI at a school that no one has paid attention to. No one knows anything is happening there, but it's one of the most egregious cases of anti-Semitic disparate treatment and violation of constitutional rights. And we'll be filing a Title VI. We'll be holding them accountable. So stay tuned. That's coming, plus 5 other Title VI filings by the Stand With Us legal department in the next few weeks, and 2 lawsuits against 2 of the most prestigious universities. So what is the takeaway here? Understand that these lawsuits and these Title VI filings are part of a new ecosystem. They drive embarrassing media coverage, which Stand With Us helps through our huge social media apparatus. We get the word out. They put facts out in the open. They show alums and donors just how much the schools have changed. And they fuel the sense of urgency among lawmakers like the Congressional Hearing Committee that we must get these schools under control. And Stand With Us is a huge part of that work. Thank you.
If you could please make Stanford one of those schools you go after, I would really appreciate it. And I'm sure many people here have their personal preferences. There are more coming that I'm aware of, and I'm very excited about it. Speaking of Title VI complaints, Ken, I know your organization has brought several. Can you talk us through a little bit of the process of handling these complaints and the expected impact?
Happy to, Kavir. Great being here. Thank you, Kavir. Thank you, Adam, all of you. Real honor to be on with Stand With Us and ICC. So we work with universities when we can, and when we can't, we hold them accountable. We go to court. We sued Ben & Jerry's last year in federal court in New Jersey to break their boycott. We sued the University of California at Berkeley in federal court a few months ago. Working with Stand With Us, ADL and AJC, we sued the Santa Ana School District for their liberated ethnic studies as well. Sometimes the courts are the right way to go. But there are other avenues too, some of which can be effective because you can threaten the spigot of federal funds going to colleges and universities that tolerate discrimination against Jewish students, and that's what we do. 20 years ago, I wrote the doctrine under which Jewish students are protected from harassment under Title VI. The notion is that Jewish students should have the same rights as any other minority. That had not been true until I headed OCR 20 years ago. Now it's in place, and I built the Louis D. Brandeis Center really for this moment when we would have a need to protect Jewish students. And thank you. We aren't the only group that does it. I'm pleased to work with Stand With Us and other groups that do, but we have Title VI cases around the country. A few months ago, we had a breakthrough settlement with the University of Vermont that was required to make many changes in the way they do work, and we're told that the responsiveness is significantly increased as a result of federal pressure. We have cases pending now around the country, from American University to Wellesley College to the University of Illinois, the University of Southern California, many of these. And what we're doing is we find for certain cases you want to go to court, you want to make a statement, you want to hold them accountable. But for others, you can hit a lot of different colleges and universities, really make a point with them, do it in a way that uses resources most effectively and causes change. We're also involved in these congressional hearings. Yale was right, they make a difference. I was pleased to testify at 3 of the hearings over the last month and a half. I really believe that this Congress is moving in the right direction to hold them accountable. So the notion is use the courts, use the Congress, and use the executive branch as well as the states.
You all really know how to play to this crowd. Yo, it is a good crowd, and our biggest ever. Yo, you touch a little bit about work you do with students on campus. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges they're facing? Brandon touched on it a little bit, and also how you're helping these students.
Sure. So probably one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now is that the universities are not on the side of the victims of anti-Semitic discrimination. It's indifference, but it's also ignorance. I have been shocked in sitting in on these investigations when our students file complaints of discrimination at how little these administrators know, the DEI administrators, the administrators whose jobs are to handle discrimination. They do not even know what anti-Semitism is. I'll give you one example. I was sitting in with a student who had the courage to file a complaint of anti-Semitic harassment. And what had happened to her, she was physically assaulted while wearing an Israeli flag. So this is the investigator whose only job at the university is to investigate claims of discrimination and harassment, including anti-Semitic ones. And the investigator says, well, how did they know that the flag had anything to do with your Jewish identity? And I said, well, the Israeli flag has a large Star of David on it. And he goes, what's a Star of David? That's what we're up against. It's not... I did not say which university. That is true. It was a California university. I'll tell you that much. And by the way, Berkeley got $40 million for the DEI efforts. We're talking universities that should know what anti-Semitism is because they're putting the money towards it, or rather towards DEI efforts. So this is where Stand With Us comes in. This is what I believe makes us unique. The legal department is housed within a broader education organization, and we're the only legal group that's housed within a broader education organization. And with that comes tremendous wherewithal and resources for every legal case that comes to us. So when a student comes to the legal department, not only do we handle their legal case, but our campus department of paid professionals and hundreds of students in our network, and our high school department of paid professionals and hundreds of students in our network also get that emotional support, because students need that emotional support and all the programming and resources that comes with the courage to bring a case. And we are able to provide them with all of that. I'll give you another example of just the ignorance that we see, but also the ways in which we fight back. So we filed a Title VI before October 7 at George Washington University. What happened there? This was a renowned psychology professor who in her mandatory diversity class was using her podium to rant all about Israel and promote an anti-Semitic agenda. And when her Jewish students pushed back, what did she do? She instituted disciplinary proceedings against them, and the department stood behind her. So we filed a Title VI action. We caused tremendous embarrassment to the university through a huge media firestorm, because that's a huge part of Title VI actions. When you file, you have to have a coordinated PR element. We caused them to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in hiring an investigative firm about the allegations. The Department of Education opened up an investigation and are looking into it. And best news of all, a few weeks ago, the professor announced that she's resigning and she's fled to Qatar. So I'm not making this up. She's literally fled to Qatar. I will sponsor any professor that wants to flee to Qatar. And the Department of Ed is still investigating the school. They're not getting off the hook. So this is what we're doing. We are holding them accountable. We're filing the lawsuits. We're filing the Title VI. We're doing the discrimination complaints, the civil rights complaints. We're doing it all, and we're having successes.
And later we'll be sponsoring some students to go to Gaza in exchange. Yo, you touched on something. I wanted to highlight one other example that was personal to me. You mentioned DI administrators who don't know what anti-Semitism is. We've seen instances where the chair people of the anti-Semitism committees don't know what anti-Semitism is. At Stanford, we had a chairperson assigned by the administration who disagreed. He was Jewish, professor from the Jewish Studies program, disagreed with the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and was aligned with Jewish Voice for Peace. We got articles placed about him. We made a social media post that Stand With Us helped us with. He also resigned altogether from the committee. We can take action and have impact. That's what you all are doing every day. Brandon, you guys work across multiple organizations on campuses. You utilize social media and digital marketing and advertising to impact and fight anti-Semitism. Can you give us an example or a couple examples of that in action?
Do you have an hour? I'm just kidding. Two things I would say come to mind. First is that before October 7th, ICC ran a program to take over and take back the student governments. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of BDS resolutions every single year on college campuses, from UCLA to Cornell to University of Florida, you name it, both liberal, private schools, public schools, Big Ten schools, Pac-12 schools, et cetera. And with our 75 highest risk campuses, we worked with our student fellows to take back the student governments. And last year, prior to October 7th, there were only a couple of student government resolutions. So that program was really successful. Now, just this week, our team is working across the country. There's been 5 anti-Israel resolutions just this week, including today at Cornell, which I think is a great example. Our team, with about 24 hours notice, hopped on a plane from New York up to Ithaca, and we worked with our partners that Stand With Us and other Hillel, Chabad, you name it, and we were working just like the other side, as I mentioned before, American Muslims for Palestine. They're providing all these professional political resources. Well, we know that the campus is the forefront for our adversaries, because they know that the next generation of pro-Israel of influentials are on the campuses. And so what did we do? We helped the students draft speeches. We used our poll-tested messaging, which I'll talk about in a minute. We know what messages are effective, that move the needle and resonate with liberals, with undecideds, et cetera. We used that messaging. We activated our digital network and our influencer network, and we put pressure on these students through digital ads, hundreds of thousands of dollars of digital ads that flooded the campus, so that every single student government member, every single Cornell student was seeing these messages for them to vote no, and why passing that resolution would be voting with Hamas. And guess what? It worked. The resolution, as we heard earlier, failed 4-16, which is great, and has not been the case at a lot of other schools. So that's the first thing, and that's a testament to we work with Stand With Us' campus team, and the Chabad was great, and in this case, the Hillel was great. Not always, but in this case, it was. And so that was kind of a coalition-wide effort. And as the umbrella organization, we convene all of the alphabet soup of pro-Israel organizations. And so that was a big win today. And then the second thing I would say is that we know that these campaigns are political campaigns, both on campus and online. And this is an information war, just as Israeli soldiers are fighting the war on the ground. We're fighting the war online. This is a digital war, and it's being won or lost in the digital realm. And so what did we do on October 7th, the first night, when everything happened? We fielded an online poll. We had our polling firm conduct a poll, and so from day one, and we've been doing this every single week, we have been getting the polls of the general American population, and now we know what resonates, what messages are working, what messages move the needle for people to support Israel, and what messages the other side might be able to take advantage of. So we knew, even before calls for a ceasefire, we knew that was a big vulnerability, that if the other side started saying there should be a ceasefire, that would move the needle significantly among Americans. And so what do? We every single week since the first week of the war, we've had a Zoom meeting with the alphabet soup of pro-Israel organizations, Stand With Us, the Brandeis Center, ADL, Hillel, Chabad, API, you name it. And we have a briefing on the latest poll-tested messaging. And we're driving that messaging. Both our coalition partners are using that messaging for their social media campaigns, for other campaigns. And at ICC, we are booking talent. I'm sure some of you know Noah Tishby. We're booking, for example, we're booking her on TV, and she's using those poll-tested messages that we know resonate and move the needle for Israel. And so we're doing that. We also have a fact-checking brand in which we're providing real-time updates on social media about what's happening on the ground, fact-checking anti-Israel organizations that are posting false and inflammatory things about Israel. And so the polling has become kind of a key driver in the pro-Israel campus community, and also generally for us to be able to effectively persuade different different audiences to understand why the war is happening, why it cannot stop, and until we continue to move the needle, we're not going to stop.
Thank you. I'm starting to get the signs from Olit. I don't want her to kick my butt. So, Ken, last question for you, and then we'll wrap with a question for everybody. What are the most significant legal challenges we face in these court battles fighting anti-Semitism on campus, and how do we overcome them?
I mean, the biggest challenge we have is just soaring demand. I would say the biggest challenge that we have is simply soaring demand. In the year ending October 6th, we had by far the highest level of intake in the dozen or so years of the Brandeis Center's existence. In the 3 weeks after October 7, we had as much intake as in the prior year. And that's similar to the experience of other organizations. And what that means is that our lawyers, and we've been growing, we're now 13 litigators, but our lawyers are now, they talk to students, they get off the phone, they want to write up their notes, the phone's ringing, and you can't not pick it up. So the challenge is just the overwhelming need from students that we want to reach out and support. We're trying to grow to meet that need, but that is our challenge.
Got it. Final question for everyone. How can those of us in this room help support your work and support Jewish students on campus? Ken, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I know that this is a generous crowd, and that's the obvious number one. I will say that some of our groups, I'll speak for myself, the Louis D. Brandeis Center also recently reestablished ourselves as a membership organization, which helps in our lawsuits to support the students. So people can join the Louis D. Brandeis Center free of charge, and it really does help in these cases. So join the organizations as a member and help through the sort of grassroots network to get the word out.
So that's absolutely right. Please join our membership organizations. That helps us to bring litigation. I would also say that if your perception is that anti-Semitism is worse because of October 7 and the woke ideology that has swept campuses, you are right. And so because the enemy has gained capacity in their army, we must expand capacity in our armies as well. So if you think about it, that let's say there's 100 campuses that we would like to go after in terms of the legal fight. Well, in an ideal world, Ken and I can maybe jointly go after, let's say, 10 or 15 of them with a really serious legal fight. But if we could expand capacity, if the legal team could grow and have more lawyers, just imagine what we could do with that. Perhaps we could go after 30 of those universities or 40. And the thing is we don't have to go after all 100, because what we are actually needing to do is create a deterrent effect. We have to make it so painful for the schools that we go after that no one else wants to hear from Ken or from me. They're scared enough that they're going to get anti-Semitism under control at their schools by seeing what's happening through the legal battle elsewhere. But to do that, we must expand. We must hire more lawyers. We must increase our army, and we would be so grateful for your support in this. Thank you.
Yeah, to echo Ken and Yael, obviously there's a lot of great organizations that are doing this work. I think also, you know, if you have grandchildren or children that are at universities, their local Chabads are doing great work. In some cases, the Hillels too, and they're really the, you know, at the forefront of what's happening. I think also we have been putting on the past couple of years a national leadership summit for undergraduate students, in which we're bringing, last year we brought 400 students to DC over the summer for the biggest convening of pro-Israel students since COVID. And so we know Jewish students right now are feeling alone, they're feeling isolated, they're yearning for time with each other and other pro-Israel students. And so just telling your networks about this opportunity. It's August 4th to the 6th in Washington, D.C. We pay for everything. It's an all-expense-paid trip for them for 3 days, and they can come together, strategize, learn from each other, hear from amazing speakers, and really just get to be with each other during these difficult times.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everyone. One last round of applause.